Welcome back to the Finding Purpose podcast. My name is Adam, and I am your host. I just wanted to thank everybody who's listened, who's liked previous episodes, and who submitted reviews. That is really important for me to grow this podcast and be able to reach other people. Today, we're lucky to have a special edition, and I don't know if any of you guys remember, but a while back I did an episode with my sister where I brought in someone who has been a part of my journey over the past 20, 30 years and who's had a courtside seat to a lot of the things that I've shared about that I've personally gone through in this podcast. And, I'm really honored to have my friend Joey Fortunato here. Me and Joey have known each other since middle school, I believe. And, the reason he's here actually is because we have our 20-year high school reunion this evening. And it felt like the right moment to just kind of have a conversation because I don't know about you, I've been feeling a little nostalgic and going down memory lane and thinking about the things that we used to do and how different our lives are now.
Sure.
So welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe's a jokester, and it's probably going to make me laugh. But, it's funny because one of the earliest memories I had when I was driving down here was this summer. I think it was like after junior year or something where we were camping out in Kyle Ruta's camper for like the entire summer and just like getting drunk and how like careless and free we were. And, how stark of a contrast that is to how we live our lives now. What do you think is your earliest memory, and when you go back to high school and that memory lane, like what stands out to you the most?
Yeah, so specifically with you, I think you're the first person that I smoked weed with.
I love that.
And then we used to smoke weed at your house because we live pretty close. I think, 5-10 minutes away, whatever. But smoking weed with you. And then I think one of the first times I drank was with you as well. So I think just kind of around that time is just the lack of responsibility, the lack of a fear of consequence. Just like we had less to lose.
Yeah, we definitely did have less to lose. And we were definitely, like, our group of friends were, I feel like, just like displaced. We had like we weren't in any category that a traditional category, like jocks or nerds or, I don't even know, like goth people. Like we just like hung out and we had like such a group of misfits. It was like me, you, Stevie, Mickey, and Jason. What was the most like significant event of back then that you carry now that you've learned from?
I think for me, it's more of, I was insecure as a kid, moved around, didn't grow up rich. I was born here in Greenwich, but did not grow up rich. So just kind of always, those specific insecurities, and then kind of felt like I had to justify myself. And I kind of did it with like anger and fear and stuff like that, kind of like a bully. So I think the biggest thing I learned is when I got out of that cycle that I was in, was able to move. When I moved to Arizona specifically, I, came to the realization I don't have to be like this anymore. Like, no one expects me to be like this. I don't want to be like this. And then I was able to really grow and develop from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You were kind of a bully, bro. Let's be honest. Well, the thing is like, I remember one time you said, you're like, listen, like, I'll just fight anybody. Like, I don't care. And fight you did, and it was funny because I was not a fighter. Steve likes to say that I fight with my face. And that's usually not the best weapon to use when you're fighting.
Yeah.
But like, it's funny because like there are certain like components of you, because you've always had like this confidence, but now you're kind of saying that like it was masking insecurity. What were you like insecure about in that moment? I mean, me and you were friends for a while. Then there was a period of time we weren't, and then we became friends again. And like I know your family, I know your brothers, and you come from like a really like close family.
Yeah, so what was I insecure about?
Yeah.
I guess I was just insecure about, kind of nonsense. I guess at that age, you always find things to be insecure about. I wasn't really I had acne in 7th grade, 8th grade, so I was
remember
insecure about that.
Accutane.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I was insecure about that. But when I got past that, that's when really my sense of self-security and how I felt about myself just kind of went through the roof, kind of like overdrive. But I still didn't lose that pattern of having to prove myself and kind of be a bully. Like it was just, and also I think, when you mentioned that we drifted apart a little bit, I think some of that had to do with some of the friends that I stayed connected with just kind of wanted me to continue to be that person. It was like amusing for them, and I just wanted to fit in, so I continued to act that way. And I think maybe you saw like, this isn't kind of the Joe that I know, or maybe the Joe that I think he can be. So I think that's where kind of that drift happened. And then it wasn't until I left those specific friends again, and then left Connecticut, where I was able to grow there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the reason why we drifted away is we also became into different things. Like that was probably around the time when I discovered drinking and kind of doing that regularly. And you were more of an athlete for the most part, but you were like an athlete, and like kind of like a class clown, attention, and people gravitated more towards that than obviously what I was doing. Like I had that group that I gravitated towards. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a notable gap. And then you left, and then you went to Arizona. When you went to Arizona, we kept in touch, but like we've always had this type of friendship where like whatever gaps that we've had between communication, like we always kind of pick up where we left off, or like I always know I can call you, and you always know you can call me, and I have bounced a lot of things off of you when you moved to Arizona. What was the biggest contrast when you went to Arizona and you jumped into that environment?
Yeah, so kind of going back to what you just mentioned, when we don't talk for a while, we kind of pick up right where we left off. I think that's kind of something that you see typically in a lot of relationships. And because you're a good influence, maybe not at certain times, but you're a good influence. So I think when you have those people that are a bad influence or a toxic relationship or something like that, you need to get out of that. But even if you get out of it and you move on in your life and you end up going back to those people, you pick up right where you left off. So I think for me, it was leaving and then finding a good subset of friends, more similar to you, more similar to Mickey, Steve. And then it was, just never going back to those old people, just continuing to stay with, positive people. And I'm not even saying necessarily positive influences, because there was drinking and everything like that. But it's different because it wasn't friends that wanted me to be the worst possible, which is kind of what I grew up with.
Yeah, well, it's funny because it's in high school we were so like wrapped up with being known by so many people, and now it's like I talk to you, I talk to Steve, I talk to Joe, I talk to Mickey sometimes, not even nearly as much. Like I talk to maybe like 3 or 4 people, and like that's enough for me. And yeah, it's totally where we grew up, to a certain extent. And you've been on the sidelines of a lot of the things that I went through. Obviously, like I got in trouble with the law. The strain on my relationship, and the strain on my relationships with my family. And what was it like for you watching me go through those kind of things?
So I was in kind of the same boat because I was going through a lot of turmoil as well. I would say that if I saw you going through that now, I would have pulled you out a lot faster than I could have at that point. But for me, it was like, oh, Adam, he drinks, he does petty crime type things, like I could relate to it. I didn't see it as, I need to change this kind of behavior because I was doing the same thing. But as we've grown, I've been way more proud of you. Yeah. With the accomplishments that you've made and the work that you're doing.
Was there ever a moment that you were like super worried about me?
Yeah. There was a moment, and it was I don't know how much stuff you say on here.
Go ahead.
It was a DUIs, it was a drinking and driving, and it was just that when you drank, you were more like, it's like you lost complete agility of your body. You're very like stiff. you'd be smoking, you drop a cigarette. I remember one time, we were in the car together and you were drinking a little bit, smoking a cigarette, and you just kind of dropped it in between like the crack of the seat. And as you're driving, you're reaching down to like grab the cigarette. And that moment, I was like, you know what? I think Adam needs some guidance.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there was moments like that throughout my story that were just like, I think about it so crazy.
Yeah.
Like the porta potty incident.
Yeah.
That shit was wild.
Yeah.
Like that was like an early red flag that like, but it was fun and people talked about it. But like, it was also like, I think a lot of the reason why back in the day, like people distanced myself because I brought trouble, now it's like I'm beginning to understand that like, there were many moments where like I was not invited. I was specifically not invited to places, and I was really hurt in the moment. And now it's like, yeah, like I get it, but that I can understand how that was like a worrying moment. One moment that really stands out to me significantly though was when my mom died, and like you showed up for that. And like that was like a really, really, really pivotal moment, obviously for me. And in that moment, you stood by where there were periods of time where I would like get sober or stop drinking, and during those times, would you be hopeful or would you be like, oh, he's just gonna fuck up again?
So for me, it was more, even if you made it through a spurt of success, I was happy for you.
Yeah.
Like I never really thought of it, Adam's gonna relapse, Adam's gonna drink and drive, Adam's gonna go off the deep end. I always thought of it like, he's doing great, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And I was just hopeful that you would continue down that road, because alcohol is not for everyone, and I will say alcohol is not for you, for sure. For sure. But what's important is that you've come to that understanding, that. But yeah, I mean, for me, you're a smart guy. You've always been smart. You've always been personable, super charismatic. I knew you'd get it eventually.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that kind of bonded us is we went through these moments together. We were degenerates at one point. We became successful basically at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think that, kind of that journey is great to be able to be on the same page and kind of grow together, even though, I was in Arizona, you're in Connecticut, where we're still able to kind of have that connection there.
Yeah, man. And it's like when you're in the trenches with someone and you see them at their worst, and, I really tip my hat to you where you didn't see me at my worst and get scared off and say, okay, let's move on. There were a couple people like, who did do that. You met a couple of my friends from my Jewish day school. I don't talk to them anymore. They cut me off, and those are relationships that I wish I could salvage, but at the end of the day, like, it is what it is. Maybe they'll come around, maybe they won't. And I understand now that the people who are in my life, you, Nicole, like, always, like, it's not about like quid pro quo, you know what I mean? Where it's more about just like supporting each other. And, I want to go back to like, when my mom passed away, during that period of time, like I was sober, and I remember you stepped up and you were really supportive of my dad, like it was really cool to see you interact with my dad. And, that's a relationship that has always had a lot of strain with me, that I've worked on over the past couple of years and we've been able to build. When you see that kind of stuff, like, cause you have like an Italian family, right? What are the values of your family that, you prioritize in just like, cause like the way you handled him like he was family. So what was that like for you navigating that? Cause that was a tense time.
Yeah, I think growing up for me, I did have a very close family. And, your mom and I, your father and I didn't always get along because I think that they saw the degeneracy.
Yeah.
And they didn't see the potential right away, at least maybe that you saw. But I think they ended up coming around to it. Your dad especially. Your mom passed probably a little bit before. But I always loved your parents.
Yeah.
And I think deep down inside, like, they loved me. And when when I was there and I saw the struggle for you, I saw the struggle for your dad. I mean, it's just so easy to be unselfless in those situations and understand that, other people are grieving. And, I always try to make light of situations and try to bring people up. I always when you mentioned before that I was class clown, I like making people laugh. I like making people happy. So in those big moments, that's when I step up the most. When my grandmother died, I did the eulogy and my mom was like devastated. There's no one else who could do it. They were all sad. And I stepped up and I put some jokes in there.
Yeah.
I think 3 jokes. I got 1 laugh. 2 of them were dead air, but I tried. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just those moments. And again, like, I love you. You're a brother. And when I saw, your dad, kind of dealing with that, it's just easy to step up in those situations.
Yeah, man. That was really special. Now that you're, like, we're grown up and we're at this different milestone in our lives, what do you feel how have your values, what's important to you now that was never important to you before, that you never thought would be important to you?
Yeah, so I never wanted to get married or have kids, ever. And I think it was partially because of how I grew up. And I never wanted to, my dad wasn't around. So I guess it was more of a fear that I'm not going to be able to raise a good kid. It wasn't until I met my wife, where, I was like, I want to be with this girl forever. And I want to have a kid with her. And we have a 10-month-old now, Logan, adorable kid. But yeah, I mean, your values change as you grow up. I mean, when I was young, my values were, how can I get drunk? Like, where can I get high? Does somebody want to fight me? Like, who can I impress? Like, it was just very surface level nonsense. And it wasn't until, I was going to college and graduated law school and then, kind of had more to lose. Like I built more of a foundation for myself. I was more established, and I was just, it took me a while. And I think part of it is not having a father to be able to grow past, that immaturity. But I got there, and now all I want to do is be the best husband I can and be the best father I can.
Yeah, man. Like, one thing I think about, like, and probably more often than I should, is like, half my life is over. If you really think about it, like, 38 times 2, like, do I have another 38 years in me? So, like, if I look at it, half my life is probably over. And, someone, told me the other day, he was like, well, it's better to fuck up the first half of your life than the second half. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Good sound advice. Yeah, but it's so funny because, like, for a while, I think I looked at myself as a fuck, but it was just that I didn't have, like, the values that, my values hadn't evolved. And, like, the things were important to me when I was 15 were important to me also when I was 25. And that's, like, not how it should have been. But now it's like, yeah, like you said, like, my family's, like, very important to me, and the relationships are super important to me. What do you do now? Because you do keep a pretty tight circle. You don't really communicate. Well, you don't really communicate, honestly. You just, like texts. And I hate it. I can't stand it. But when you do communicate, like, you have just these group chats, like, the people, like, in the group chats, you have, like, what? How many people do you communicate on a weekly basis with?
Yeah, so Steve FaceTimes me once a day.
Me too.
Yeah, and when Steve FaceTimes, it's more, do I have 30 minutes to bullshit with this guy? Mm-hmm. And with the wife, kid, job, everything, it's kind of difficult. But I talk to you, I talk to my 2 brothers, I talk to Mickey, I talk to Garrett in California. I try to talk to Eric and Matt in Arizona. And I don't know if I'm leaving anybody out, but yeah, that's basically
It's so funny how the tight knit circle, and we're kind of opposite in that sense, because, like, here I am trying to build this community where people, because for me it's important for me to connect with a lot of people, because I think about the moments in my life where people didn't reach out to me, and not that it was anybody's responsibility, but hey, like, there's power in everyone's story, and that's a reason why, like, I wanted to have you on and my sister on, because you guys are big parts of my story. What do you think is the most pivotal moment of your life?
The most pivotal moment of my life was when I was bartending at First and Last, and I was cleaning a table in the back. I think I was 20 years old, something like that. And I was like, I don't want to do this forever.
Peter hated me.
Oh yeah, he hated you. He hated you. But he didn't know you. Yeah. If he knew you now, he'd like you. But I was cleaning the table and I was like, I don't want to do this forever. And then I sat down with Peter and he was like, you shouldn't do this forever. I think you should be a lawyer. And then the next day I went to WestCon and enrolled. And then my whole plan was to be an attorney. I did, after that I went to law school for a year in New York and then finished off at Sandra Day O'Connor in Arizona State. But for me, it was that moment. Like I'll always remember that moment. Like I know the exact table I was cleaning. It was very, very vivid memory. And I was just like, I can't do this forever. And then everything just kind of clicked right there. Ideally, things click sooner, and I can grow up faster, but it just didn't work out that way. But I'm really happy where I'm at now.
Why do you think it was that moment? Like, I'm sure other people have given you advice in the past.
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily the moment of him telling me that I should be a lawyer. It was just, I was done with it. I was like, I'm sitting there again, cleaning this table and I'm like, do I want to do this in 10 years? Do I want to do this in 20 years? Not that there's anything wrong with that. I just wanted something different. I wanted to challenge myself a little bit more, obviously, than that.
Do you think it was just like you were ready to get the message? You're ready to receive it? Like, you believe in that?
I was ready to make a change, for sure. I don't know where it came from because it did just kind of hit me all of a sudden, which was, it's crazy how that happens. Like you hear people have like a moment of clarity or an epiphany, and that's exactly what happened there.
Hey, fucking Peter, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy. We've had a lot of good times, man. Maybe share a story that sticks out, when we were just having a good time.
Well,
because you're a good storyteller. I need to tell a story.
When you say good time, you mean
anytime.
Okay. Well, there was a time where we were out at O'Connor's.
Brookfield?
New York.
Ooh.
Yeah, we're in New York. And I was with you and Steve. And I went to the bar. I think I had one drink, one Jack and Coke. And I've always had a pretty high tolerance. And then all of a sudden I'm outside and I had tunnel vision and tunnel hearing. And I was like, Adam, I think something's wrong. And you're kind of drunk. You're like, no, you're fine. You're fine. And I was like, okay. And then I'm like, I think somebody slipped something in my drink. And you're like, no, you're good. You got this. And this was in the middle of winter because I remember it was snowing. But I woke up in the Ashley Furniture parking lot.
Oh yeah.
In your mom's car.
No, that wasn't my mom's car. That was a Chevy Corsica that I bought for $800.
Okay. I thought it was your mom's car, but I woke up just covered in throw up and I was like, what happened? And then I have no pants on, just boxers. So I get outside, middle of winter. I'm looking around. I go to the door of Ashley Furniture because I remember you worked there. And all of a sudden I see Steve there and he comes to the door laughing. And that's when Steve met that girl he was dating at the time. But we just all went in there and just started laughing together. And it's those crazy moments where it's I fell asleep with throw up on myself. I had to have been roofied with the windows down in winter and got up, walked inside, and we instantly started laughing and talking about, hey, what are we going to do today? and that brings it back where it's we just had no sense of consequence at all. And because we were able to do these crazy things and get away with it, it just kind of...
Well, it's even crazy because that was just normal.
Yeah.
That was just a normal Friday night. When I was working at that store, I would sleep there 4 nights a week because I would just get trashed over on Mill Plain Road and then just stay there and wake up and...
They've got great beds and couches.
Yeah, they're convertible couches. That's why I sold them. It was wild, now that you're, obviously are you going to stay in North Carolina forever?
Probably not.
Really?
No.
Where else would you live?
I'm open. It's really wherever my wife would be happiest is where I'm open to. There's probably 25 or 30 states I'd be open to moving.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't necessarily know that it's where you live as much as it's, your surroundings and I have my family.
Yeah.
I have my wife and my son and hopefully another kid at some point. And yeah, I mean, as long as we're together, I feel like everything's good. And I mean, the country, the world, it's all very interconnected. So everything's just a plane ride away anyways.
Yeah, man. I mean, up to 3 places that you've lived, which one was your favorite?
Arizona is my favorite. Yes. I like the dry. I like the heat. I like the people. The food is just gross though. It's like a lot of that Tex-Mex kind of food grosses me out. And when you go down there and you're like, hey, like, are there, do you guys have any good delis? They're like Jersey Mike's. And I'm like, oof, no. Like they don't get like food in the Northeast. I don't know if it's like the pollution in the water and the New York bread.
Yeah.
But it's so delicious.
Dude, it definitely is. Yeah. It's delicious. Yeah. It's full of chemicals.
Oh, I love those chemicals.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what concoction of chemicals they put in it, but it's so good. Even in North Carolina, like.
The water good?
No, it's not. I think it's too clean.
I feel like anywhere, if you're not in like New York, Miami has good food, but if you're not on like the coast, you're getting shit food. Sorry. Like, you're eating chain brands. You're eating like Quiznos every night, and they have weird ass chain brands in the middle of this country. Yeah. Nothing wrong with it. Like I like the middle of the country. Like I was out in Iowa, like I loved it. They're a lot friendlier. I don't know how they're eating all these shitty food, but whatever.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah. I don't really spend a lot of time.
But they have a lot of family recipes.
Family recipes.
Gotta stick to those.
Yeah, but I like going out to eat. Like I like going out to like the food center in Fairfield, getting like a bacon, egg, cheese with hash brown, or Bruno's buffalo chicken pizza. Like that food is what I miss. But maybe some of it's just tied to the emotion of when I grew up with it.
Yeah.
So the memory of it. It's
so funny, man, because I drive through New Fairfield on a regular basis. I'm in Danbury a lot. My dad still lives in Danbury, and it still is it's always going to be home for me. Like I drive by the lake, the memories that each little milestone have. Bruno's parking lot, the old Bruno's parking lot, the food center, like you said. For me, I get very, very nostalgic. And one of the things that I struggled with the most was when my dad sold our family home. And that was hard for me because it was the house that my mom picked. There were so many memories there.
Beautiful house.
Beautiful house.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of aspirations to, buy it from him and live there. And I don't know what it was, man, but it took a while for me to get over that. But for someone who moved around a lot, like, was 136 Shortwoods like that for you at all?
No, I've never felt that way to kind of any material possession. But I do understand it. I do. Especially for a house. Because there's so many memories there.
Yeah.
But no, I never felt that way because I think it is because I moved around so much.
Yeah. Because you guys went from 136 to Sherry.
Yeah.
And then you moved to Arizona.
Yeah, I was in Arizona. Yeah, exactly. And then a bunch of different places. I think I moved on average once a year, when I was in Arizona. So, I mean, I always liked it. And now I've been in this house with my wife for, almost 4 years. So I'm ready to move.
Yeah. Dude, I think for me, it was just anytime shit hit the fan, it was like that home base. And not having that, it's more of a psychological thing than it really is a physical thing.
Yeah.
It's just it feels like there's a hole, but now I have a home and I love it and I love Fairfield and I love where I'm at. And hopefully plan to, buy a house and do those type of things because it's important to plant roots, and now with my dad getting old, when, one person who I love is your mother. Your mother, there were periods that she hated me, there's periods that she loved me. I think that's also a big reason, both of our parents hated me.
Yeah.
They hated us. They hated us both deep inside.
They did.
Deep down, they hated themselves. No, I'm just kidding. But your mom, talk to me about her. I mean, I love her.
Yeah, I mean, my mom has always been very nurturing. So 4 kids by 22, I believe. and a grandmother by 38. She's always like she had a minimum wage job when we moved to New Fairfield. Like, I don't know, $7 an hour or something, taking care of 4 kids. Like, it's crazy how she was always able to provide even with so little. And again, going back to my insecurities, growing up without much, it's different. You always had a lot, I feel, growing up. Like your parents were well off, your dad worked for IBM, but it was just different. But my mom was just always about family, always about us being together. The thing that makes her happiest is when all of us are together in a room. That's all she wants. Is for everyone to be around, crack jokes, reminisce, and everything like that.
Yeah, man, dude, she's great. Like, when I saw her a month ago, you just tell how happy she is and proud of you guys she is. Because we put her through some shit.
For sure.
Dude, I remember we used to whip her CRV around town. That might have been the one that I dropped a cigarette in. It literally might have been one of those nights. And we would, she probably worried some nights whether the car would be there in time for her to go to work.
Yeah.
Because she, worked right there in the center of town. And that's how I always knew your mom was there. I was like, all right, she got to work on it. She got to work,
Yeah.
What things that they instill in you do you plan on instilling in your son? What has fatherhood done to you?
Yeah, so I would say I'm going to do a lot of the opposite. For me, I never had any discipline or consequences. So I remember I was with Nicole, my wife, and we were looking through my old report cards from when I was in kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. And my mom read them, and she's like, "Oh, look at this. Joey gets in trouble, but he has a great smile." And that's what she kind of emphasized. Isn't that so great? And then when we sat down and read them, it's lack of effort hinders progress, distracts other kids.
Lack of effort hinders progress. That should be oh my God, that would be the title of my fucking biography.
But it's Joey really needs help at home. Joey has severe problems in class, but that was always just pushed aside. And it's okay, that's fine. But is he cute? Is he smiling? Is he happy? That. It's just different. For me, I'm just going to instill more discipline. Obviously be a loving father, but at the same time, there's going to be consequences. There has to be consequences, or else, I was fortunate enough to get to the realization where I wanted to grow up. I made that conscious decision to grow up, but that doesn't happen for everyone. Like I said, the friends we left behind, they're in rough shape, and so I just want to ensure that I give my kid the best life possible. And when you mentioned we're 38, half of our life is over, I will say
you ever think that shit?
I do, but the biggest thing to kind of alter that view is my kid. Because when I die, but he's going to live on. And I feel like any values or, good qualities I can instill in him are going to continue to live on. So, they say that you die twice when you die, and then the last time anybody mentions your name. So to leave a legacy, I feel like you're gonna live on forever.
Yeah.
So I take,
what fears do you have?
Just the regular fears, maybe I'm on the road one day driving for work, and then I get into a car accident, and I'm not around for my wife or son. Just those major fears, but I always push those aside because just like you, everything always works out.
Yeah.
I've never we've done a lot of crazy shit, but everything always works out. And it's always been my mentality that everything will always work out. So anytime I have a worry or a fear, I push it aside.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny you say that because I look at it that way now, where it's I shouldn't even be here. A lot of the shit that I did, and a lot of decisions I made, and a lot of danger that I faced that I didn't in the moment think was dangerous.
Yeah.
And
on the cars,
racing
on the cars,
all the cars.
That's wild.
Why?
I can't imagine anyone doing this. So we were racing 2 cars down the street to get into New Fair. What is that, 37?
Yeah. You and Kyle Ruda.
Yeah, and the speed limit, I don't know, it's 35 or something like that. But we were, there were 2 drivers, and then the other 2 people were on the roofs of the cars, just holding on. And we're going 65, 70 miles an hour trying to win that race. One sudden break, one jerk of the wheel, our lives are over. But in the moment, again, with no fear of consequence, you can't rationalize or process that. It's just like everything's gonna work out. Everything's gonna work out. And I mean, we got lucky. It did.
It did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny. Yeah, like I'm so far removed from the feeling of untouchability. You know, just like I was touched. You know, I was touched, and I barely survived it when I got sober this time. You know, where it's, you know, the pancreatitis and just a culmination of everything where, you know, I've never had anyone tell me, like, I'll die if I continue living the way that I live. You know, like, that's the thing that, like, you know, I knew it maybe, or I heard stories about it happening to other people. Yeah. And, you know, like, but it's just to think that, like, we used to do shit like that, knowing it was dangerous.
Yeah, I would say your life expectancy is 25 years old. So everything you're doing at this point is kind of borrowed time.
Bonus time?
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that, I mean, listen, it's really easy to die. It is. People die all the time. But at the same time, it's really hard to die. And I can say that because I've kind of seen your life. You know what I'm saying? Where, I mean, I feel like, you know, you're like a cat. And there's so many moments that I don't want to say you should have, but that you easily could have died.
Yeah. Or at the very least, ended up in jail for a very long time.
Or significantly injured, like seriously injured. Yeah, I mean, something. But, I mean, here you are.
Everything always works out. Here we are. And now we're going to our 20th high school reunion. You know, how do you feel about that?
Well, I was going to ask you this. So, it's been 20 years, right? What do you think your brand is today versus what do you think your brand was when you graduated?
That's a great question. You know, I think my brand today is me, as opposed to when I graduated, my brand was who I thought I should be or who you wanted me to be. Now I'm just me. You know, I live for me with good intention and humility, and I gotta be grateful for everything. And I think if I talk to the person who graduated, I would be like, don't worry about all the outside noise, just work on you. And it's a stark contrast. So yeah, I think that's the brand. My brand is me.
And then when you look at the viewpoint of others and how they would see your brand, same question. How do you think that they would see you today versus how they saw you in high school?
That's something I would care about then. That's not something I even think about now. So I don't know.
Good answer.
Yeah. What about you?
I think, you know, in high school, I was just kind of class clown, bully, waste of potential. And now I feel like I've done a 180 and I'm...
Well, 360.
Well, 360 would bring me right back to where I started.
You've done a 180.
Yeah.
I was seeing you tell me on that.
But yeah, I mean, I think that I finally hit my potential. I finally, you know, like I'm in stride. Like I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and it makes me happy.
You're happy.
I'm happy.
You're happy. See, that's the thing, man. You know, I think at the end of the day, like saying that and being like, I'm happy and content. You know, like, you know, we were living in the what's next kind of lifestyle.
One day at a time.
What's next?
One day at a time.
And it's like, it's scary being happy.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm really happy that you're happy. You know, it's so funny because knowing you, who you used to be, knowing who you are now, and I really don't give you credit as much as I give Nicole credit, because, you know, I've seen you in other relationships, and I've seen what's important to you in other relationships, and who you are in this relationship. Like, when you talk about better halves, it's like, yeah, like, this is what they're talking about.
Yeah, and you know, and it kind of, I would say that, you know, so part of it,
whatever.
So part of it, I think that, again, going back to when you're in a relationship, especially a toxic relationship like that, you fall into this kind of like this pattern of violence, not necessarily physical, but a pattern of violence where, you know, one person fucks up and then, you know, you hold that over that person's head, and then that person fucks up, you hold it over their head, and you're no longer teammates. You know, you're just combative. You're always trying to one up the other person. It's no longer a relationship. And then there's moments where you get out of that relationship. Maybe you're with someone else and you go back to that, because you're like, well, I've grown in this relationship. I'm ready to
fuck that, Joe. What you're saying is this is the one relationship that you don't manipulate. Let's be honest.
I would say
every other relationship I've ever seen you in, you had to manipulate it in your favor. This is one that you don't. That's why you're happy.
I had an issue with, I enjoyed having control of the relationship.
Yeah.
But then once I had full control of the relationship, I lost interest and I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
This is the first relationship that I was able to bring the best me into it.
Yeah.
And, fortunately, it's with someone who deserves that and who offers it back to me. So it's a great relationship.
Well, I just think control is not important to you.
No, not at all.
Which is great.
Well, because you grow past it.
Which is great, but also makes you very difficult to communicate with. But luckily, I can communicate with her.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's what works. It's like a secretary. But just kidding. She's right there. I'm like, oh shit.
No, she's great, and
it's like the brains of the operation.
Well, we both have brains, but I would say that I definitely lack organizational skills. I'm more big picture, and she's project manager even at her job and everything like that. Like that's what she excels at. So it's a good balance. Like she's able to do those things because in her mind, she has like anxiety about things not getting done. So it's like she's forced to do those things. Yeah. I'm so relaxed that like I would just never do a lot of these things unless I had to.
I feel like if you were in charge, you'd either be really overcommitted and then not show up to things, like kind of decide that day. Like you commit to everything and then like pick and choose and just like, it'd be a bad luck.
It took me a while because I used to commit to things without talking to her. But I've grown.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And now we have a conversation about it. And she's like, well, do you want to do that? Because we're going to be doing this at the same time we're doing that. And then I'm like, all right, you choose.
No doubt. Yeah. And, I just want to kind of close on a couple questions for you. You've been a big part of my journey of self-discovery, my journey of purpose. What would you say are the most important components for someone who might be navigating their own journey?
Yeah. I mean, I can only go anecdotally. So what I'll say is one of the biggest things for me, and you can't overlook it, is it's diet and exercise. I think that, it has to start there. I talk to a lot of people who talk about how they have depression and, they have anxiety. And I'm like, okay, like tell me about like your normal day. And they're like, well, I work from home and I'm on the couch. And then when work's over, I watch TV and I'm like, do you go to the gym? No, I can't motivate myself to get up. Right. And then I'm like, okay, what do you typically eat? Well, I'll get like Taco Bell delivered and stuff like that. I'm like,
best deli ever. Trinity.
Yeah. It's phenomenal Mexican food. Don't get me wrong. But what I'll say is, you just have to make that conscious decision to start wanting to work on yourself and your health. Because once you can get a little better physically, you'll start feeling so much better mentally. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I would say that I would venture to guess that physical activity is the number one thing that will reduce anxiety and reduce depression. And I don't think that it's given enough credit. I think that, people are given medication and stuff like that. But to answer your question, I think that you need to make a plan.
Yeah.
And you need to say, on this day, 2 weeks out, on this day, I'm going to start and here's exactly how I'm going to do it. And you need to stick with it. And then once you start doing that, you just feel so much better. It changes your life completely.
Yeah, man. Since you brought this up, because I think that's like so important, and that's something that was transformational to me, just fitting in that physical fitness component into my day to day.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. It's working natural brain chemistry, and at the end of the day, I think it's also about building your self-esteem, self-value, self-worth, and that's really the fundamental components of self-love. You can't love yourself if you don't love how you look. And if you can't look yourself in the mirror and be like, all right, like at the very least, I worked on my body today. Because that's the only physical evidence that you have where it's like, okay, like I'm good, like I feel good. And one thing for me with fitness now, it's like not really as much about like I'm not trying to like deadlift like 500 pounds, 700 pounds. I'm just trying to live, like I'm trying to move right. I'm not trying to have a hip replacement surgery by the time I'm like 50.
Yeah.
Which is so like prevalent nowadays, just
and like those are the areas I focus on, like hip mobility, just functional movement rather than just, hardcore weight training because, like at the end of the day, for you also, you want to be able to move when your kid wants to go out and throw a baseball
Right.
and not be stiff. And, that's like 18 years out, in the future, at that point, like just maintaining your body because we only got one body,
And also, I mean, like, you look at any professional athlete or really anybody who's physically fit, there's so much time, work, and dedication that gets put into that it's such a sense of accomplishment once you start. I'm not even saying, you have to have an 8-pack and, I'm just saying once you start to see some kind of beginner gains or some changes, like it's such a change in your mind of, I can't do this. I feel like shit. I look like shit to, I can do this. And there's so much more I can do.
Yeah.
Like it's so eye-opening once you start that process.
Yeah, no, totally, man. I love that. What would you say are the 3 daily habits that you incorporate to further your purpose?
Yeah. 3?
Fitness.
Yeah. I mean, I'm up here in the Northeast, so my diet is completely off the rails. It's like pizza and delis every day. But like I track my macros and, I pay attention to protein, calories in, calories out, the gym. But really it's, spending time with my son. Even though I'm working, can I pick him up? Can I play with him? Can I hold his hands while he walks? And it's just being just a really good husband. It's easy to kind of, get caught up in your own life, whether it's work or whether it's, fitness. But it's important to remember that you're also a husband and you need to bring the best you to the table there. And obviously it's not going to be all the time. She says that, everyone always sees the best side of me. And she sees me when I'm like recharging. I get that because everybody needs time to recharge, but I also still want to go out of my way. Not that it's a chore, but go out of my way to, even when it's just us to be funny, to be outgoing, because that's what she fell in love with.
Did she though? No, I'm just kidding.
Probably.
All right, man. Like I'm super grateful to have you.
Yeah.
We're going to be off to this reunion. I just want to kind of close on this last question. Like, what do you hope to get out of this?
Out of the reunion?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to see you and Mickey more than anything. But I guess part of it for me is to be able to go back, and I know you say you don't care what people think, and I respect that, but I was such a dick that I want to kind of just show anyone who's interested that I've changed. Like I've grown.
Do you want to show them that you're changed, or do you want to take ownership of people who you might have hurt if you see them?
So there's no one specifically that stands out like, oh, I need to see this person because of X, Y, Z. For me, it's just, if I was a dick to you or I bullied you or something like that, like, I apologize and, ready to move forward. And, here's all the great things and tell me about the great things in your life and take a genuine interest in that.
Cool. All right, man. Well, it should be fun. I just want to thank everybody for listening. One of my best friends, Joe Fortunato, coming up from Charlotte, and this is a special edition. So hope you guys tune in. Hope you rate, you follow, you review, and we can further build this community. Thank you.